Let's try that again. Hey, audio's back. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Adobe Live, where I'm a consummate professional. We'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land in which we are creating and streaming from today and pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging. I'm Flynn, and I'm your host and terrible audio technician, and I'm here with Jeremy Lord, the excellent illustrator from Sydney, Australia. Hey, Jeremy. How you doing?
Hey, how's it going?
I'm good. I'm very glad that I could hear you just then. Yeah, Johanna, just let me know if the audio is coming through. Everybody let me know if you can hear it now. Yeah, great. Okay, cool. Yeah, audio issues aside, we are here to do some pixel art. This has been such a fun, kind of series that we've been doing with Jeremy. It's fun because it's quite a departure from your traditional work, your commercial work, but it's so much fun here. And we thought we'd go straight down the rabbit hole. And do some Gundam inspired pixel art. So what are you thinking, Jeremy? Are you excited about this one? What's up?
Yeah, totally. I'm super excited about this. Pixel art, as you said, is a far cry from what I would normally do commercially. But it's super fun to do. There's so many different things that you can do and trying to crack where you're going to put the pixels and how can you create, an eye or a hand with 4 pixels is always super fun to do, sometimes very frustrating.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's something that's sort of near and dear, and being a fan of retro and gaming things, pixel art kind of presents itself as a definite kind of thing that I should have in my repertoire.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm looking forward to this. I've gone a little bit ham here and kind of done a sketch of this kind of Gundam inspired Shogun Edo period samurai robot.
Okay. Yeah. Do you want me to show that now? Should we bring it up now or just jump
jump
in? Let's just do that. Let's jump straight into it. Yeah. This is cool.
So yeah, so all of the pixel art that I would do would probably, start still with a sketch like this. That's not a pixel art sketch, just so that I can kind of see what I'm doing. So I'm not just kind of going in blind. I'll take this into a different window in a sec and kind of start actually doing the pixel art side of things. We'll probably have to lose a fair bit of detail. And there's always a little bit of hey, this is what I want to do. And then the pixel art says no, this is what you can do with me. And so the art might change relatively significantly. We'll see. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, so you're going to start because you got to boil it down to its the minimum amount of pixels and information to make it pixel art in the first place. So of course, you're just gonna have to lose a lot of stuff, but at the same time keep the silhouette and the details in that you can.
Yep. Yeah. So there's always going to be a little bit of give and take with something like this, and all these little vents and things that are on here that they might be a little bit challenging. So we'll see how that goes. So let's go. Let's get out of this full screen. Let's make a new file. And we're going to go and make sure that we've got, normally I would just work in millimeters, but here we're obviously doing pixels. So we're going to swap to pixels. And this is your first kind of point of decision-making time. There's going to be a lot of decision-making to do. And this is going to be how detailed do you want / need this to be, right? So if we go for something that's 8 pixels by 8 pixels, that's going to be ridiculously tiny. We're not going to have a lot of information to play around. On the flip side, if we're going we're going multiples of 2 here, just like RAM, just like everything else, which is what you 8-bit, 16-bit, 32-bit, 164-bit, all these different kinds of different things, right? So we're going to go and do a 128 by 128. Just to see how that goes. We might resize later on, but we're just going to kind of respect the pixel art gods here, and we're just going to go with something like this. So I've got my file here. You can see that my brush is huge in comparison to my previous one. Just for comparison's sake, I'm also going to drop the darkness of this a little bit, just so that I can see, you can start to see my pixel grid now.
Oh, cool. Right.
So if that's white, I can't see that.
What are you actually changing then? Are you just changing the background white
I'm just
layer?
changing the darkness of the background layer. So
right.
I haven't made a new layer here. This is just a white, new, fresh document here.
Out of the box.
And I'm just going to drop that down to like a grayish, light gray, just so that I can actually see the pixel, so I can like see where I'm kind of starting here.
Cool.
Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my sketch, and this is where it's going to start to get real janky. Like I've got a few different options in my sketch here. I've done one obviously with this hand here kind of coming out at us. If I'm feeling lazy and I don't want to draw hands, which is every artist's kind of kryptonite, I've got this shield version.
Right, so just cover the hand up with something else. So just avoid that, avoid that whole mess.
Like, it's one of those like little tricks of like, if you can't draw the feet, or if you can't get them right, like make them stand in grass, and then you don't have to draw the feet. Right. It's like stuff like that is like little like artist hacks like that you can kind of try and get around a little bit.
What's harder to draw, hands or toes?
Hands probably.
Yeah.
Because there's more stuff, like more movements and like intricacies that you can do with a hand than you can do with a foot.
Fair.
So yeah, so I've got different versions of this, like all the different kinds of things that I can play around with. I'm gonna go with this one. So I'm gonna smash all of these together into a new layer. So what I've done here, just quickly, just for reference, is I've selected all of my layers in here, even the hidden ones, doesn't matter. And then I've hit Command J, which duplicates them. So now I've got copies of all of those. And then Command E, which just smashes them all together. Right.
Cool. So you're taking all of the layers, even the hidden ones, and you're just putting them all onto one layer.
Yep.
But I assume that would not take the information from the hidden layers. It'll only
That's correct.
Squish
Anything that's
shown.
hidden doesn't get shown in here. So for instance, if you saw like I've got these wings, they're not going to be on my like final smush sketch because they weren't
hidden.
They weren't
so
shown.
It's okay to select them, but they won't actually be part of it.
Yep. As long as they're hidden, you're good. So what I'm going to do now is just Command C or Control C just to copy that layer. And then I'm going to go onto my file here and then hit Command V. And it doesn't look like it's done anything. You can see my layers pasted in here, but because the artwork is so huge and my actual canvas is so tiny, I'm going to have to zoom way out here.
Oh my goodness. All right. It's super way bigger.
Yeah. So this is how big the artwork is. Right. So I've done a Command T here to transform it. So this shows me the bounding box around that artwork. So it's huge. Now, before I do this, I'm going to run into some issues. I'll show you the issue so you can kind of understand what I'm talking about here. If I just go straight ahead and start resizing this, holding down Shift so that I don't lose my proportions, right? So as I'm doing this, like it seems fine, right? It's like it's getting a little bit kind of funky on some of the stuff. I'm losing some of the detail, obviously, because I've got this like huge file and I'm putting it onto this very small canvas. So like Photoshop obviously can't get all the things that I put in here. But if I hit return now, you'll see that it's actually kept a fair bit of the detail, but it's quite blurry.
Yeah.
I'm keeping some of the lines, but it's also a little bit blurry. I'm getting a fuzzy edge and it's not super good. So sometimes that can be handy because, again, like I said, it keeps the detail. Other times it can get in the way. So the way to get around that, if I just undo that transform, is go and hit Command T again. And then up where it says interpolation up here, you want to take it from bicubic automatic, which is set by default. You want to change that to nearest neighbor.
Nearest neighbor. Okay.
Yeah. And so what that's going to do then, if you look at the difference of the sketch of what's going to happen here, is when I resize this, I need to not do this like an idiot and actually zoom out properly so I can do this without having to do it 17 times.
I always do that. I'm like, how long is this going to take me? I'm committed now.
And
also, sorry, just jumping in. Also, hi everyone in chat. If you have any questions as we're going along, questions about pixel art or what we're doing, or missed something that maybe Jeremy showed, feel free to let us know in chat, and we'll try to address it. So the chat we're using today is Behance, but if you're on YouTube and all that sort of stuff, we'll keep an eye on YouTube too. So let us know and say hi. Quick shout out to Fatima and Angelica. Idios World, I'm probably saying that incorrectly. Johanna's here looking after us. Yeah, come and say hi. We'd love to know where you're tuning in from. All right, back to you, Jeremy.
All right, so I've just undone this. I'm just going to show you guys the difference in between one and the other. So this is as it is by default when you do your transformation, right? So this is the sketch as we are looking at it now. And I'm going to slap another one on top of this. And I'm going to do my little interpolation trick and resize it. And you'll see what I mean by kind of like the level of detail will vary immensely in between one and the other. Okay, so this is normal.
Can you zoom in a bit on this?
Yep.
Sweet.
All right, so that's the sketch normal. So there's a lot of information here, even though it's a bit blurry. There's a lot more line information. This is the pixel art version of that. So I'm not getting any blurry lines, but I've lost a lot of information. So in this instance, because it is such a detailed piece, I'm actually probably going to benefit from having this one up instead. Right?
Interesting.
If I was trying to use this as the beginning of my outline, I'd definitely want to do this one, right? But I just need something a lot simpler to work from.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm going to delete this guy, and I'm going to keep this one and call him Sketch. And I'm going to drop the opacity on him quite substantially down to like, 20%-ish, and then I'm going to lock him just so that, like, I do this out of a habit. Like, sometimes I'll just be in the zone and I won't notice that I'm on the wrong layer, and I'll start drawing and drawing and drawing and drawing, and then half an hour in, I realize that I've done everything on the wrong layer, which is frustrating. So locking that just like stops me from having that issue.
Nice.
And then I'm going to slap a layer underneath that, and that's going to be my base layer. All right, so now we're ready to start making this pixel art. So there's a few things that I need to switch in order to do this. First of all, I need to change my brush, right? So my brush by default has this happening. If I zoom in on this,
that's a pretty cool Y, by the way. That just accidentally is like really Seb Lester like Y with a gradient. That's it, done. Hey, guess what? Free typography lettering stream, everyone. That's dope. I really like it. It's like a sneak.
So what you can see here is that, like, there's always with Photoshop is trying to make things look soft and smooth. And from a distance, if you look at that, there's no problem, right? That's nice and clean and soft.
Right.
But if you zoom in on that, you'll see that there's not a clear delineation. There's like 1, 2, 3, 4 different shades of pixels in between the black and the white. So I don't want that. I don't want this blurry line. That normally is exactly what you're looking for, this kind of slight blur on the thing to stop this aliasing. So aliasing is when you can actually see the pixels, but we actually want that. That's part of the pixel art look. So instead of using a brush, which is our standard brush in here, right? So in your brush, you've got 4 different options. That's your standard brush right here. We want the pencil tool. And what the pencil tool does is it loses the softness. So if I do the same kind of thing, you'll see that looks horrible and kind of really bit scrappy from a distance, but up close, that's going to give me that pixel art look that I'm looking for.
Right.
So I'm going to start with that. That's my brush. I'm going to go down to 1 pixel, right? So that's literally just going to paint 1 pixel at a time. So if you look at my pixel grid here, when I do this, it's literally just going to fill each one of those in turn. Yeah. And I need to do the same thing to my eraser. So eraser is going to be a little bit different. If I go to my eraser tool, there isn't a pencil eraser. I need to go to the normal eraser and then go up here where it says mode, change that from brush to pencil. And then change that down to 1 pixel, and then we're good to go. So that's my brush, and then my pixel eraser will erase 1 pixel at a time.
And so is there just a shortcut? Is there just a shortcut that you use to switch between one and the other? Like I imagine.
B is brush, E is eraser.
Easy. B and E, everybody.
Pretty straightforward. It's one of those easy to remember shortcuts in Photoshop. I think it's one of those ones that like Adobe made first. It's like we're going to make the normal ones first, and then we're going to use other ones for like other things. Right. Yeah. So B, brush, E, eraser, easy peasy.
Easy peasy.
So yeah, so we got all that, but we also need to change a couple of other things as well. So in our selection tools, we're probably going to need to do these a little bit later. So I'll get to those a bit later, but the main thing that I'm looking at is up here, we've got anti-alias ticked. We'll want to untick that, right? So the problem with that is if I use that with aliasing ticked and I fill, you can see I'm getting that blurry edge again.
Right.
So I don't want that on my selection. I want to untick that, and then I can make a selection and fill, and it's going to make it filled in pixel art. So all of my selections are going to need to have the anti-aliasing turned off when I'm working in pixel art. So there's a few kind of steps if you want to like switch from normal smooth painting to pixel art. There's a bunch of stuff that you need to do to your tools and your options to make sure that you're getting that done. But once that's all set up, you're good to go. By the way, I've tried doing this as a workspace, so setting up a new workspace up here as pixel art. It unfortunately doesn't maintain all those options that I've ticked in there for you. So there's no like quick switch. You have to do them kind of one by one.
Right. So you know, once you close Photoshop and quit and all that sort of stuff, and then if you open the old file, it's still not going to remember those settings. So you have to make sure that you go through. Okay.
Yep.
Good to know.
Okay, so we're ready to go now. And there's a couple of ways that I could do this. I could start from my outlines and start drawing that in, or I could start from a silhouette and see how we go. So in this instance, because I've got a lot of detail, it's probably going to be smarter for me to start from the outline and see how I go. Right. So I'm going to call this guy my shorthand for outline, which is OTL. And I'm ready to roll. So again, I'm probably going to have to be zoomed out to do this, because when I zoom in, you can see like nothing makes sense anymore.
Yeah.
Whereas if I'm zoomed out, I can see eyes and I can see a helmet and shoulders and everything else. So I'm going to need to do this zoomed out. And how I usually like to do this is just go straight in with my Wacom. So I'm using a drawing tool, right? I'm using one of these guys, and that's allowing me to paint without kind of using a mouse. But one of the beauties of pixel art is that I can totally do this with a mouse if I want to, because it's not quite like drawing. It's just a little bit more kind of easy to do. There's only so many places you can put a line when you're doing this. So it's definitely doable with a mouse, which is one of the things that I kind of love about it, is it kind of fits with that old school thing of like drawing with a mouse is a little bit mental, but definitely doable when you're doing pixel art.
Yeah. Very good. Sorry, there's just a question in chat. What time is it in your country now? We're in Sydney, Australia, and it's 1:19 p.m.
20 past 1. Yeah.
Lunchtime stream. There was also a question, could you also use the tilde key when you are switching from pencil to eraser?
I'm not sure what the tilde key does. I've never actually used it. That's a good question. I'm pressing it now. It doesn't seem like it's doing anything. Maybe I haven't set up that shortcut.
There you go. It does nothing. I think in one of the Adobe programs, I can't remember which one, it does do something super useful. I remember Carty Webster talking about it, but maybe not for us, maybe not today. So we're just being really crude here. We'll have to fix this up quite dramatically later on, and kind of introduce this idea of what is like clean pixel art and getting these clean lines in. But at the moment, I'm not going to be too worried about that. I'm literally just going to start thinking about kind of getting these lines in and getting something on the page that I can kind of work with later on. Cool. And I'd be interested if anyone in anyone watching, anyone in chat, if you've tried some pixel art before. If you did, did you use Photoshop or try to use another app or something, and what maybe you used it for? That would be cool.
So now we're getting into this is what I was kind of talking about before, where how do you draw the eye as pixel art? So when I've done this kind of sketch before, it's easy, right? But here I've got a limited amount of pixels that I can do. So the second eye is just these two kind of diagonal pixels, and kind of hope that works. This is also maybe where I'll start to think like, should I be doing this at a higher resolution than 128? Am I going to have enough pixels here to do the information justice and have everything that I need to have on here? There is a threshold as well. Like, like you could just say, well, why don't you just always go more pixels if you can put more information in there? It's like, well, the point of pixel art in a sense is less information, is like an economy of means, and trying to get something kind of shown without literally just drawing it. Like that's the whole point of pixel art.
Right.
And so if you go too high res, it changes from pixel art to pixelated art. Right. And then you've kind of lost that look, right? Like at what point does it stop being pixel art and just becomes like low res art?
Yeah, that makes sense. So does that mean that you're kind of trying to do it at the lowest possible? Like you're trying to kind of push it towards the lowest? Yeah.
Kinda, yeah. So it's like, it's a bit of a challenge. But it's one of the fun kind of geeky things about pixel art is like trying to crack the pixels to make them do what you want to do, and figuring out like I said, like how can I draw an eye with like 3 pixels?
Yeah.
And when you crack it, when you get it right, it feels really good.
Got to crack those pixels. But
it can also be like super frustrating sometimes when you're just like, oh man, I just can't do it. Or like here, for instance, if I do that, like that little vent here is just sticking way too far out. So I got to be a little bit kind of careful with this and see how we go. So yeah, there's going to be definitely things in here that I'm not going to be able to get looking as kind of like smooth as when they were just in my actual kind of drawing.
Yeah.
There's also a stylistic thing here where like I'm using outlines. Not all pixel art is comprised predominantly of outlines. A lot of pixel art uses an outline just around the edge of a thing. So basically kind of just doing this, right? So edging it all with a nice kind of thick black outline. And then inside, all the information inside is just different colors. So that can save me something. So the issue with that is this, right? So if I've got, for instance, a vent, like I've got these little vents on the side of his helmet that are part of that kind of like Gundam look. But if I do something like this, if I outline a vent and then I do this, like that's okay to kind of work with a little bit. But if I only want that to be too wide, then how do I draw the vents inside? I don't have any room anymore for the things inside. Whereas if this was just colors, I can get rid of these guys and I've got that same amount of information, if that makes sense. I don't know if I'm explaining that in the best way
it makes sense to me. Yeah, if you've already got an outline, then you have less like pixel real estate to play essentially.
I suppose what I'm saying here, like, this might be a bit of a better example, right? If I've got a square on him, like if I've got a light on him, right? So let's put like a little like blue light on his helmet here. If I put an outline around that, I now have something that goes from 1 pixel wide to 3 by 3. That's a lot more information and real estate using up on that helmet. So outlines are not necessarily always the best way to go. And sometimes you will just refer to just kind of using colors to get what you're trying to get done.
Yeah. Makes sense to me. Got some people saying makes sense in chat as well. So I think we're good.
Cool. Nice. I have succeeded.
Good job. I love the interaction, everybody. It's really cool. Let us know how we're going. I've got a question, if we can throw in, from over on YouTube.
Yeah, please.
I'm just curious about how to make the background, the ambience buildings at Sudoku 2 or Legend of Mana, if you know those games. I'm not familiar, but maybe you are. Is it freehand drawing and change the pixel into low pixel? Okay, so I guess the question is around the background. Is someone like freehand drawing it all? then they change it to low pixel, or do you think there's like another process?
So this is the thing, right? So remember at the start of this, when we were doing this thing where this big drawing, this like high res sketch that we did, and then we brought it into a low res image and reduced it down, you will like that's usually not the best way to just go like, I'll just take that sketch and bring it into pixel art and use that as an outline, because the transformation of such high res to such low res, the program just won't be able to translate that fully. So you're going to lose a lot of information in the process, right?
Yep.
The way that I've done it here, where I've kept a lot of the information, but at the same time, I can't use this as an outline because it's too blurry. So I need it to be clean. So that's why I'm using it as a trace to kind of go over and see kind of how that looks, right? So it's tempting potentially to do this shortcut of like, well, cool, I'll just do a sketch and then reduce it down to low pixel. But it's rarely ever going to translate well in that respect for you. Even something like this, right? Like even my sketch here, if I reduce that down even more, so make sure I'm on my nearest neighbor, which I am. If I start dropping the resolution down to this, you can see that's like Photoshop's just like, well, what do you want me to do with this?
Yeah, what are you doing, like, Jeremy? Yes.
How do you want me to do this 2 pixel eye reduced down to 1? Like, I can't do that for you. That's just not how any of these programs work. It can't make up the image for you. It has to use the information that you're feeding it and then see how it can adapt for it. So there unfortunately isn't really a shortcut for just like taking a live sketch or like a big sketch and then just making it low res in pixel art. You just kind of have to do it and hope that it works.
That was pretty cool. Yeah, okay, you're on it. Explain.
What you see me just do here is just a little quick shift, right? So click on that pixel, hold down shift, and then it will create a straight, or in this instance, the illusion of a straight line, by doing this kind of step-by-step thing. So I've got cool. 3, 4, 4, 4, and 3. So this is what you kind of want to do a little bit here. So as you see me kind of doing this really, really roughly and kind of harshly, it's very kind of all over the place. That's not good kind of pixel art creation. As much as possible, what you want is to use regular. So if things are straight, right? So straight down, straight across, easy. You've got horizontals and verticals, great. You also, 45-degree angles are your friends as well. If you can't do 45-degree angles, then your next best friend is 2, 2, 2, 2, and so on and so forth. Or like 3, 3, 3, 3, and then you get this illusion of these lines that are regular and straight, but are at different angles, which can be a bit tricky to kind of get. But what you don't want is this, right? Where it's like 2, 1, 1, 3, 2, and then it's just like, that's not a straight line. That's some weird kind of squiggly thing that's happened.
Yep, totally.
So it's one of those kind of challenges of pixel art, is to get that right and to see like, all right, well, you know, it might not be the best angle for me to do this, but is it the one that's going to be the least kind of tricky for me to work with? The other thing that you want to do, generally speaking, is avoid doing corners. So what we kind of say, it's like the bishop, not the knight. So the knight does 1, 2, 3, yeah, on a chessboard. Right. So it does like this one, then over here, and then there. Bishop goes diagonal. That's what you want. So you don't want a line that looks like this. That's like a staircase, generally speaking. So this guy right here, this little pixel there, it's got to go. Right. Because if I don't do that, from a distance, your eye kind of sees that as a clump. I don't know if you guys can kind of see that. Like there's a little bit of a packet there. Whereas if I get rid of that, becomes a lot more kind of like, oh, that's a straight line. That's no longer a clump. So generally speaking, you want to have just things on the corners just go to diagonal straight up rather than have a step. Sometimes can't be avoided. But generally speaking, like this guy, I want to get rid of that, right? And just kind of continue on with my idea of like, again, here we got 2, 2, 2, and then 2, and then potentially kind of go 45 down to there.
Right. So you're trying to create those like really consistent angles. You're like, oh, so you get excited when you see a 45-degree angle. You're like, oh yeah, this is perfect.
100%. Yeah, 100%. And sometimes I will change the drawing to just be like, all right, you know what? There's no way. I'm going to do this just with 45-degree angles. So done.
And we have a question from chat as well. Sorry, go on.
Oh, yeah. No, go ahead.
So yeah, question from chat, which is probably a good opportunity to just reintroduce kind of what we're doing today. The question was, who are you making?
Who am I making?
Yeah.
I am making a Gundam-inspired kind of samurai Shogun Edo version of a Gundam SD kind of classic suit. So we don't want to go full, like actually draw a Gundam. We want to make it Gundam inspired. Yep. So one of the things that it needs to be kind of established here before we can kind of start doing this is what makes a Gundam suit a Gundam and what makes it recognizable. Because we're going to try and kind of communicate to people that like you're supposed to see a Gundam suit in this particular illustration. Right. Yeah. So some of the things that need to be there is like the wings at the top of the helmet, right? Or the kind of the eyes and the kind of face masky thing here and the vents on the sides of the cheeks. All these things that makes like a Gundam what it is, like those are the ingredients of a Gundam, right? But we don't want to just copy that. We want to make it, that's the jankiest looking Gundam in the world.
That's like if I did a pixel art tutorial, that's what my final would be.
So we want to just use that information to our advantage and just kind of go like, all right, I need to give the viewer enough information that they can say like, oh yeah, I get it. That's got that Gundam flavor.
Yeah.
Without being like, oh, that's just a drawing of an actual Gundam.
Right. Someone's pixelated
same thing with the
Gundam 1-for-1 kind of thing, or
yeah.
Yep.
Same thing with the samurai stuff, like that Shogun kind of look. I've got the samurai helmet, which is not part of the original kind of Gundam design. I've changed those kind of wings on the helmet to be more those kind of, you know, Kabuto kind of looking elements on there. So yeah, that's basically kind of like the gist here that we want to kind of work with. Again, same issue here, right? So here I'm trying to do this little branch on the helmet, and I'm going to go here and hold down Shift. And sometimes, like here, you got 4, 4, 3, 4, 4. Not great.
Not perfect.
Okay, so can I do this with a more regular kind of thing? And this is where I'm going to kind of have a crack, right? So I go 1, and then because it kind of goes out, and then I go 3, 3, not 4, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It's not bad. I'm going to end up a lot further to the left over here than I want to, because I'm not going in the same kind of increments, right? So to get to that height, like I'm here when I should be right here. So maybe not the best way to do it. Maybe on this one, I can sacrifice this kind of like perfect pixel vibe and just go where I want to go.
You ever change like the original sketch? You're like, oh, I'm only off by a couple of pixels. Maybe I'll fudge it a little bit.
Sometimes you have
that start getting dangerous, and you might get to the end and zoom out and go, oh man, I went so far away from my sketch that it's not looking right.
Sometimes the pixel art just tells you where it wants to go, and that's not necessarily where you want it to go. So sometimes I'll have to change the sketch to make it kind of not look horrible and get that information across, which is not ideal, but it's got to be done.
Cool. Just a couple of comments from chat as we're rolling through. Thanks for throwing these in there, everyone. It's great. Spencer says, I feel like people have an assumption that pixel art is easy or even skill-less. Jeremy has some good insights I've never thought about, which I think is interesting.
It's definitely got some things that are easier than just like straight up drawing. It's probably more like accessible in that sense than kind of just doing a straight up drawing. But the trade-off is this thing of like, you got to say the same thing with fewer words, right? So having fewer words means there's less chance of you to mess something up or get the proportions wrong. Or like, it's more forgiving in that sense, right? But at the same time, you might not be able to say the thing you're trying to say, and it might kind of cause some frustration. So yeah, there's definitely a trade-off in that respect, and it's not necessarily something that's just like, oh yeah, it's easy peasy, I can just do this, and it'll be sweet. It's like, well, depends on what you're doing.
Why use many word when few word do trick? So Michael also says, so a lot of pixel art is fooling the eye, not what is actually accurate. Yeah, which is, I think that's
exactly right.
I think that's a really, really good point, because, you know, and thinking about how the audience is going to see it and zooming out as well. Very good point, Michael, I think.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's like giving the illusion of a thing, right? Like giving the illusion of a circle, like your traditional kind of very low-key circle. Like obviously that's going to be the smallest kind of pixel value you can make, but that's not really kind of working out as a circle. So one of the things that you can do is you can do something like this, and then that is your almost kind of most basic expression of a circle. So that doesn't look like a circle at all, but if you zoom out, it might start to kind of register as a circle, right? So I might need to kind of do a little bit more to this. Maybe we'll do a 2x2 instead, like that. Yeah, there we go. That's your most kind of basic circle in pixel art. It's the illusion of, from a distance, it looks like a circle. When you zoom in, it's nothing like a circle. So this is the language that you need to kind of learn when you're doing this, and just go like, all right, how do I make this thing look like it's the thing that I want it without actually drawing it? Because I can't draw it because it's pixel art and they won't let me do it.
Yep. Nice one.
So I might start adding in some color here, because we're going to be doing these line works for a while. Like it's going to take a while to get the line work looking right where I want it. So I'm going to start thinking about where is my color going to go and how I'm going to kind of be able to translate that color.
Cool. Color
Sorry,
good.
I'm just geeking out on this highlight, on this face mask.
So you could spend a lot of time like in the weeds, right? As well.
Yeah, absolutely. And trying to like get something looking right. There's a lot of zooming in and zooming out. I apologize for anybody that's got a bit of kind of motion sickness. It's a little bit kind of, but that is what it is, right? Because it's just you up close, it looks a certain way. From a distance, it looks completely different. And you're looking at it from a distance, ideally, because it's meant to be quite small. So you have to see it for how it looks when it's going to be at size.
Yeah.
So let's put some color into this. So I'm going to make a new layer, and I'm going to call this one color. So I might make it a group, actually, because I'm probably going to use a bunch of layers in here. And I'm going to call this one base. So with this, like traditionally what I would do is have like almost every color, or almost every like main color in this illustration would be on its own layer. But because it's pixel art, I don't need to do that. And it's one of the really awesome things about pixel art is it's actually it's so far down into like the bowels of how like bitmap artwork kind of functions instead of vector. So we go working with pixels. It's actually gone back to being completely entirely scalable. And the key difference is there is no curves. There isn't a single curve in this artwork. It's all just straight lines or squares, right? So with my selection tool, that's going to be super easy for me to work with. It's not going to do this thing where it's trying to figure out where the pixels are because I've got that soft blurry edge that Photoshop creates to kind of give me the illusion of smoothness. Because it's not smooth, I don't have to worry. So I could actually do all of my colors on on the same layer and then just use my selection tool to isolate them and edit them. It's one of the nice things about pixel art that we can kind of look at. But for now, let's just go straight in and start putting kind of like a base layer on this. So I'm going to go with the kind of traditional white. In this instance, I'm using an off-white. So it's just one of those kind of tricks that are good to kind of know is there's kind of no such thing as white or like pure white or pure black in reality. Like it's always kind of the light of the day is always kind of influencing. Like if you're wearing a white t-shirt and you like take a photograph of it, no matter how like, you know, midday sun, full brightness it is, there's always going to be a little bit of color to it.
Right.
So it's just one of those things that kind of makes it a little bit more kind of realistic looking, and helps just kind of do this. So I'm using a very kind of light blue here, because those are the kind of like blue and white and red are those kind of traditional Gundam colors. And so I've kind of just, you know, infused, if you will, a little bit of blue in my white here, just to make it kind of fit a little bit more with the artwork.
Have a question from chat. Would you ever start with colored lines instead of black/single color?
You could absolutely do that. You could absolutely do that. And this is where, for instance, we were talking about this at the start. On this, like on the helmet here, on the kind of the neck guard part of the helmet, which is like right here, I might decide actually there's too much information here for me to do with the outline. So I'm going to go ahead and actually use my line work to disassociate those two and kind of clarify what I'm doing. And that would work like this. So on my outline layer, I can actually lock the pixels or lock the transparency, which is this little kind of checkerboard icon here. On your keyboard shortcut, the shortcut is /. So that just kind of locks that. And then I can just go into my colors and just pick a slightly darker version of whatever the kind of the helmet's going to be. And then I can just draw those in. Because I've locked my layer here, I can kind of paint wherever I want. It's not going to go overboard and kind of color those pixels up. And that's just a nicer, kind of smoother way of like, there's still the information, but it's not as in your face. It's not black. It's just, it's still there, but it's not an outline. It's not as thick. It doesn't read as prominently, right? Same thing with our kind of spikes here. So they're going to be yellow because they have to be, otherwise it's not a Gundam. So now I'm on my color layer, so I can color this guy in. But again,
this is a fun bit. This is like coloring in for
it adults. It totally is. So again, like this is where I can start to think about, you know, like, is this too much? Is the black outline too heavy? Is it too prominent? So now I can go back to my outline layer here and I drop something, and don't ever do this as well. This is another like color tip for you. Don't ever go in your eyedropper here, just drag it down here, because that is just this some like baby poo color. It's not good, right? Adding black to yellow to make it darker is not the way to make a yellow, like a shade of a yellow. If you're going full impressionists, you want to add in a bit of blue if you're using paint. But here we're just going to slide that down into the warmer colors and just go with an orangey kind of color. And that is a lot more accurate to a darker yellow than just adding black to it, which is just,
right.
No, don't do that.
Don't do that.
And now we can do our little kind of trick here where we're just using the contour of the artwork to create this sense of kind of an outline. But inside the artwork, the outlines themselves are hemmed in by the darker version of the color that they are made, if that makes sense. That's a lot of words. So
I got to admit, I didn't completely follow that one.
Right. So basically, if the horns are yellow, the outline of the horns will be a darker version of the yellow. If the helmet is blue, the outlines on the helmet will be a darker version of that color. So if, for instance, like the lining on the shoulder pads here will be red, because again, that's those Gundam colors. If you don't know, always kind of go back to your referencing and kind of, look online and try and figure out what those colors are actually, so that you get them looking correct. So that's these little kind of outlines on the shoulder pads here. This little kind of gem thing in the middle is also going to be red. And so what I would do here is I would just slide it down into the darker version of, and then use my outline layer to create that kind of thing. So again, I'm losing the super thick outline that I feel maybe is a little bit too heavy, but keeping it on the exterior. And then I've got that. And you can see immediately that it's actually kind of just alleviating the weight of that outline a little bit for me.
Yeah, very cool.
So yeah.
By the way, we've got less than 10 minutes left. So if there's any questions or comments or anything for us today, 10 minutes to go.
So at this stage, what I would kind of start thinking about, like presuming that I'm, like a little bit further into this artwork and I'm liking where it's all kind of going, is I would do a little bit of shading on this and see kind of how that all starts to kind of come together a little bit. So what I would do in this instance is I could just kind of take my base layer, and this is one of the things that I usually like to do, and I can either duplicate this and make a kind of a layer mask on it, but what I prefer doing these days is on my group here, I'm going to do an adjustment layer, and I'm going to do it on a hue saturation mode, right? And then before I do anything, I'm just going to drag this out, because by default, when you put it on the thing, it just kind of drags it into the group. I want it to be on top of the group. So now I can double click back onto this guy. And this is very important. I need to click down here. And what that does is it kind of ties it into the group. So the group that's underneath it, which is my colors, are the only layers or group of layers in this instance that will be affected by this. And then I can drop the lightness and maybe kind of change some of the kind of color opacity here as well, just to get something looking good. And I've got a layer mask on there. So then I can, by default, Photoshop kind of provides me with a layer mask on it. So I can start to block out some shading in here. And same thing, the shading is going to give me that extra layer of information where things might not have been clear to begin with, like shapes might not have kind of stood out enough for my liking. The shading is going to help me with that pretty dramatically.
Yeah.
And it's going to allow me to kind of block out shapes a lot more clearly. The nice thing about doing it with an adjustment layer is that if I change the colors, that adjustment layer is there for me to kind of work with and change that. So if I'm changing this to a different set of colors, the shading will, I kind of like that. It's a bit like Stormtrooper-y vibe.
That's cool.
In a way I like that. So the shading is just there for waiting for a color to happen underneath it, and just edit that accordingly.
That's so cool. I hope you guys followed that, because that just means you could make, like, you could do everything, do your shading and everything, and then you could do so many iterations, like, you finish everything up and then very quickly, like, completely change, like, all of the colors, like almost instantly, and you could export kind of different versions very, very quickly. different color schemes.
This
different
function is my best friend and my worst enemy because as you said, you can do it instantly.
Yeah,
I spend an insane amount of time fiddling with colors and going like, hey, what if the horns were pink and the thing was blue? And it's like you can just do this for like decades and never actually achieve anything because it's so easy to do. So in this instance, it's just as well that we've got like an actual live reference that we need to work from to get those kind of colors looking the way we need to.
Nice.
And then later on, I can maybe just go in and say like, you know what, maybe this is too Gundam-y. So I'm going to go in and select the light blues here that I had, and Command H will hide that selection. And then Command U, I can start to play around with like, what if he's got like a little bit more of like a dark, like Shogun armor kind of vibe to him. A lot of variations. There's so many different variations on Gundam suits. That's, something that we can kind of totally work with. As you can see, as I've done that, I probably will need to change the outlines that I did previously because they're now way too bright. But again, there's lots and lots of stuff that I can mess around with here to get that look that I want to kind of achieve, and maybe even give a little bit more glow in the eye with just kind of like a couple of lighter pixels in here. And then I need to block those guys out. Yeah, that's really good. That's shining now.
Nice.
Yeah. So at this stage, this would be me like doing outlines and creating kind of more and more detail into this and kind of finishing this off for a little while, but following all the kind of the steps that I've just shown you guys as we're doing this. So literally just creating this step by step, using this sketch, and then maybe potentially compromising on certain things. Like the middle of the chest here is going to need a lot of information. I'm not sure about this one, guys. I'm not sure we're going to get there.
So there might be too much information for the the amount of pixels that is there.
100%.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not gonna sandwich well in there. So again, maybe I need to up the res. At this stage, we'll probably avoid doing that because I've really done so much to this. If I up the res, it's going to mess around with the drawing that I've created so far.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, we'll see. Well, let's wrap it up there because we only have about 2 minutes left anyway. Nice. And just letting you know for regular viewers of the stream, we'll be back. Back next Tuesday. So there's no stream on Thursday. It's a public holiday here, so we won't be streaming. So we'll be back with Jeremy for some more pixel art on Tuesday. As we kind of wrap things up, Jeremy, if people want to see more of your work, where do you usually send people to check it out?
My website, Instagram. Website is jeremylord.com. Easy peasy. And my Instagram is jeremylord_, I think. Yeah. Sounds
familiar. Johanna can share it in chat, and I'm pretty sure there's some links to your stuff in the event description below on YouTube and Behance. So yeah, tune in next Tuesday. I hope you all have a wonderful week. And hey, Jeremy, thank you so much for hanging out with us here on Adobe Live.
Oh no, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me, and looking forward to next week.
Alrighty then. We'll see you then, and see you all then. Bye.